to the Italian Football Podcast.
Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Italian Football Podcast. I'm Carlo Garganese here as always with Nima Tavali, and the last few days in the Mercato have been absolutely crazy, even by Italian standards. We could do probably a whole show alone on the Romelu Lukaku soap opera. A furious Inter pulling out of negotiations because Lukaku was negotiating with Juventus behind their backs. He went AWOL, and Lukaku now looks set to probably join Juventus in what would be one of the biggest shock transfers I can ever remember. There's so much to discuss about this. And if that wasn't enough, Juan Cuadrado is joining Inter after so many years at Juve. So it just gets crazier and crazier. Juve have frozen Leonardo Bonucci out of the squad. So what does that mean for his future? Juventus are also in talks to sign Frank Kessie. So there's lots to talk about on today's show with Juve. Milan will complete the signing of Tijani Reijnders from AZ. We have some insight on what to expect from him. Fiorentina have made one of the signings of the summer in Fabiano Parisi for just 11 million euros. It's crazy though. Roma are battling between signing Alvaro Morata and Gianluca Scamacca. And finally, away from the Mercato, we will celebrate Italy under-19s winning the European Championship on Sunday. Italy finally win a final this season after so many defeats at the very final hurdle. So lots to talk about. And for all our first-time listeners, this is our free weekly episode, which we do every Monday, reviewing the weekend Serie A action and all the biggest talking points in Italian football. If you want to support the Italian Football Podcast and receive all our content that we do throughout the week, including our weekly Q&A episode every Tuesday, where we answer all the questions sent in from our Patreons, plus the weekly Thursday midweek review show, plus interviews, post-match reaction, and much, much more, then go to patreon.com/TIFP and become a subscriber for just $2.99 a month plus VAT. For all of you that listen on Spotify, iTunes, Apple Podcasts, we'd really appreciate giving us a 5-star rating. Give us a follow, give us a subscription. We're on YouTube as well. It really helps to help us grow. Okay, let's start off then with Romelu Lukaku. Okay, right. There's so much to talk about here with Lukaku, so we'll try and split it up into different sections. First of all, just to summarise the situation, Inter have ended negotiations with Chelsea over the weekend after Lukaku and his lawyer failed to reply to phone calls from club directors, Inter club directors, on Friday, and that suggested that, well, did he actually still want to return to Inter? Very, very bizarre, because it seemed like this was going to happen. It now looks like Lukaku is on his way to Juventus. Juventus have a verbal offer of 40 million euros, including add-ons. But they will only make their move once Dusan Vlahovic is sold. PSG are set to make an official bid for Vlahovic probably this week. So that's the situation. Let's start, Nima, first of all, though, with the Inter side of things and the Lukaku side of things, because they are connected. How much is it a shock, Lukaku's behaviour here? Because it
really a shock?
Maybe it's not. You can answer that. But just to finish the question, because it seemed as if Lukaku wanted Inter. The negotiations were ongoing. It seemed like he wanted Inter and only Inter. So why this behaviour? Why this sudden turnaround?
Well, that's exactly it. This is classic Romelu Lukaku. If you look at his career, he does not handle his relationships very well. He's absolutely hated by Everton. He's hated by Manchester United. Chelsea fans would like to put him in a catapult and send him to the moon. Inter, he's completely nuked his bridges with Inter. And he's going to a club where the fans racially abused him less than 6 months ago. So they don't want him. He's not very good at building relationships that last. Anderlecht and West Brom are probably the only clubs where he hasn't screwed the club and the fan bases over. So it's I'd say it's par for the course with Romelu Lukaku. He seems like a very, very like a person who's so easily influenced by whoever he's close to that particular day. It's like you could. I actually think a broomstick could probably do a Jedi mind trick on him. I mean, it's just he just by like he's so easily distracted. He was angry at Pastorello for allegedly, getting him to Chelsea, and now he's got Sebastian Ledour, who's his lawyer, who, he seems to be the one that wants to get him to Juve because he's going to earn more money at Juve. He's going to be paid 11 million net per year. At Inter, he would have to go down to 6.
So what is the motive then? Do you think it's money then?
I think it's money. I think it's money, and I think it's got to do with the fact that he didn't start the Champions League final.
Yeah, because just to stop you there on the money thing, we've got to remember he took a cut, didn't he, to join Inter, right?
Yeah, and he was going to sign. He's going to go down to 6 million, 6.5 million, which was
so he made sacrifices in order to return to Inter. So it can't just solely be financial, you would think.
Well, I think it's to do with the fact that he feels that he sacrificed a lot to return to Inter, and he came to Inter and. Inter wanted to cut his wages even more. He didn't start the Champions League final. And Romelu Lukaku is somebody who needs to be the main man. And at Inter, he's not the main man anymore. And he didn't start the Champions League final either. And what he fails to understand is that he was awful for 70% of last season at Inter. Not just the injuries, it was afterwards. Edin Dzeko, that famous clip of Edin Dzeko laughing at him when he couldn't even, when he controlled the ball like a 6-year-old. So, I have to say, I'm not upset about this at all. I didn't want him at Inter. I don't think it's worth the 35 million euros Inter are going to spend. I don't think he's worth the money he's going to command. I don't think he's ever going to be the striker he once was under Antonio Conte. I don't think he'll ever reach that level. I think he's still a good striker, as I've said on this pod consistently for a year now. And I think he will going to Juve, he will be the main man. That's what matters to Romelu Lukaku.
Yeah, that's what I think possibly is the main motive for him, that maybe he is going to become the main man then. But a lot of it just still doesn't add up to me in terms of the time frame. I mean, if it's financial, it doesn't quite add up because of what, like we just said, he's already taken sacrifices in the past and made it clear, that's made it clear that money wasn't the most important thing, certainly last year. So why should it be this year? Then the Champions League final argument, I think, yes, that's probably played a part of it. But then, surely that it would have been apparent straight away after the Champions League final, and Inter would have not gone through all this, if you want to call it a charade now, of all these negotiating that's been going on the Champions League final was 5 weeks ago. We've had 5 weeks of negotiations with Inter to get to the stage where Inter have basically now got close to agreeing a transfer fee with Chelsea. And then all of a sudden on the Friday, in one day, it all falls apart. So the time frame, like if he really was upset about the Champions League final, why didn't it become clear straight away? Is it that maybe the Juventus bid only sort of like materialised concretely recently, and then when it became a possibility, then he started to listen to it? Or did he just overplay his hand? Did him and his lawyer maybe try and use the Juventus offer as a way to get the Inter a higher wage from Inter? I don't know. And then maybe it backfired and Inter just said, right, we're not playing your games anymore. I don't know. It just doesn't really add up to me. But maybe that's just Lukaku for you.
That's the thing. It doesn't add up because he's not a very... he doesn't strike to me as a very, very strategic person. I don't think he understands these guys. I think he's very... from what I understand, his mother is advising him, and he listens to his mother, and she's been kind of saying, well, they felt betrayed by Inter not playing him in the Champions League final. They felt that he'd returned to full fighting force and blah blah blah. Inter, however, the problem is with all of this is that he hasn't communicated this with Inter. I mean, Di Marzio was reporting that he was even negotiating with Juve immediately, before at
the end of March,
yeah, when he found out, that he was being rotated and all of that he felt that he wasn't going to be the main man, like, already back then. I'm not sure whether that's true or not. I think most of these things, when relationships sour, people tend to want to put out their version the most, but it's quite clear that Inter feel absolutely betrayed and furious with him. They're out. They're not interested. They don't want him. They don't want to have anything to do with him. We know that Lukaku called Ausilio to try to mend bridges. That phone call lasted about 45 seconds to 1 minute and 15 seconds, and there was a lot of shouting and screaming involved before it was hung up. So Inter Inter are completely united in this, like from the coach to the management to the players. Like, everyone seems like they feel completely betrayed.
And he spoke to the ultras as well. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, that's what's been reported, is that he spoke to the Curva Nord and said that he would come back, that he was not going to sign for Juve. Since then, Curva Nord have denied speaking to him. But then again, I don't really believe that either, because I think they would look like absolute idiots if they confirmed that they spoke to him and he lied to them, and then he goes to Juve. That will put them in a position where they will have to act, and I don't think they want to put themselves in that position. I think everyone has a vested interest in this mess to make themselves look good, and so I don't. What
is the feeling of the fans overall towards Lukaku now, and what will their feeling be if he joins Juventus? What will the feeling be?
If he were to join Juventus, he would be the biggest traitor in Inter's modern history. Don't doubt. There's no doubt about it, because Inter moved heaven and earth to get this guy. You have to remember,
they forgave him when he came back.
He forgave him when he came back. They backed him even though it was a difficult season. Everyone was looking forward to next season, that he was going to alternate with Thuram. He completely did this, created a complete and utter mess. And that game, I'm kind of glad that game is being played, Inter Juve at San Siro in February, because I think that Inter will be handed a permanent stadium ban for the rest of the season after that game. The amount of abuse that he's going to get at that game, if he turns up in a Juventus shirt at the San Siro, is going to be unlike anything you have ever seen before. You have to remember, this is a guy who has declared his love. I mean, let's remember what he did at Chelsea when he was asked, could you ever play for Juve and Milan? And he looks down dramatically and says never about 15 times. And that's no exaggeration. My, he says. When you do things like that, when you lie to people like that, when you mess with people's emotions like that, it's that has repercussions. Personally, I don't care. I didn't want him. I'm actually happy he's going. I don't think he's worth the money. I don't think he's worth the wages. And him going to Juve makes the Serie A more spicy.
It certainly makes it more spicy. There's no doubt about that.
And also because Cuadrado's going the opposite direction as well. I mean, you've got. This is Serie A drama, and it's good for the league. It raises the profile, because Cuadrado was. I'm not upset about that deal either. I look at it from a financial.
Well, we'll come on to Cuadrado in a bit. Let's talk about the Juventus side with Lukaku, because
I don't understand
because it makes no sense. I mean, Juventus have sent an offer to Chelsea, a verbal offer to Chelsea, 37.5 million euros. Plus 2.5 million in add-ons. That's 40 million in total to Chelsea. But it will only be valid once they sell Dusan Vlahovic. We are expecting some kind of bid from PSG this week for Vlahovic. We don't know how much that's going to be. There is some talk, 90 million, which I would be quite surprised if they went that high, if they went more than what Juventus bid bought him for themselves. I mean, that'd be fantastic for Juventus. But either way, the numbers make no sense for Juve. I mean, they have to make 140 million this summer, in profit on the transfer market. This whole new Juventus, and remember, they're not in the Champions League either, and they're not going to be in Europe at all because UEFA are going to ban them from the Conference League. This new Juventus is supposed to be cost effective. It's supposed to be orientated towards youth. It's supposed to be sustainable, financially sustainable, but also sustainable in terms of buying players and building a squad that can be together for a number of years. You do not have that as your project if you then go out and sign an injury-prone 30-year-old who, as you said, was a total disaster last season up until March for 40 million euros, and then you give him a huge contract. And again, we don't know exactly what the contract is, but all the reports are saying between 8 and 12 million euros a year. So in gross, if you do the maths and you work it out and you add the transfer fee to the gross wages of what would be, well, again, we don't know the length of contract, but some are saying 3. Even if you take 3 years, you're looking at 70 to 80 million euros. If you're going a 4-year contract, you're looking around 100 million euros. I mean, it just makes no sense. Financially, makes no sense at all. There's no sell-on value. He's 30 years old, so you're going to have no sell-on value. Even if you sell him in a year or 2 years, you're not what you're going to get from him. You're not going to get anything. So is Lukaku going to be just going to be another Pogba? I mean, I financially, just everything about it, financially in terms of sustainability, it doesn't make any sense in them, does it?
It doesn't make sense like that, but they will. I mean, he will be cheaper than Vlahovic. I mean, Vlahovic is on, how much is he on in terms of his wages?
No, he'll be on around about the same as Vlahovic.
So the same. So essentially, you will be getting, you sell Vlahovic for 80, 70, 80, and you buy Lukaku for 40. That's a 30 million profit. So I guess that's how they're looking about it. I'm starting to think that, this 140 million euro that they need to make is a bit of BS, to be honest. I don't see, because unless they're going to sell Chiesa for something, for something stupid as well. But it doesn't seem like they want to do that. I think Giuntoli is showing that he is actually very pragmatic. He's gone in there with Juve. He's spoken to Allegri. Allegri said what he wants, and he's getting him that. He's just doing what he's supposed to do. And
there's no doubt this screams of Allegri influence, pushing for Lukaku.
Oh, he is an Allegri player.
There's no doubt about
I honestly think, listen, if Lukaku can be fit, Juve playing 1 game a week, Juve are in the Scudetto race. Whether or not they play good football or whether they will, have
they should be anyway.
and
They should be, regardless.
Yeah, but they will be. They will be with Lukaku playing 1 game a week, and. Look, with what they're looking to do, I mean, you're seeing them bringing in the players they are. I think Juventus are definitely going to be our Scudetto challenger, for sure. Lukaku will win you games, ugly games, in the Serie A. And he's a system player. Allegri plays a counter-attacking football. It suits Lukaku. He can hold up defenders. He can hold them off. He can link up. Like, we've seen all of that. So I think, I think this is for Juve. This is not a bad deal because Vlahovic is clearly not working out, and him and Allegri don't seem to get along, and he doesn't seem to be able to do what Allegri wants him to do. So that makes sense. But of course, long term financially, I don't think you're in that situation. I think Juve just need to make the numbers work. And if they can bring him down, make a profit.
But in terms of team building, in terms of building a team to be successful, over a period of time, again, it's just another short-term signing. He's 30 years old. He'll be 31 during the season. Yeah. It's just again, there's the same criticisms that we've been making for Juve for the last 3 to 4 years. Like, even if he is, I remember saying exactly the same things about Di Maria this time last season. I'm just saying that I've just changed the name to Lukaku. Basically, it's just like.
But I don't think you can say that about Lukaku. Lukaku is not like with Di Maria. Di Maria was virtually just came and used Juve as a build-up for the World Cup, which he won.
No, I know. I mean, I'm talking from Juventus' point of view. I'm just talking about, they're buying someone who's 30 years old. They're spending, up to 100 million on a player that what you can, if you're lucky, you're going to get two top years out of him. And then
But that's the thing, though. Will Juventus that's the thing, though. I'm not entirely sure because I think that Juve will keep him for 1 or 2 years and then they'll sell him to Saudi Arabia. Same thing with Pogba. I think they look at it like that. I don't think they look at Lukaku more than 1 or 2 years just to get themselves back into the Champions League, back into contention to fight for Scudetto. I think that's why they look at it. They look at this as kind of he gives you guarantees. If you're pushing,
but
Bonucci
does he give you
out,
guarantees? I mean, the guy his body was totally wrecked up until March, so there are no guarantees.
That's the thing.
I mean, there's more. There's just as much, if not more, chance of him just being another Pogba. That his body can't.
True.
And you're spending 100 million. You're spending 100 million euros.
That is a risk. That is a huge risk Juve are taking. But I think, given the financial situation they're in, that's one they feel they have to make.
What, for 100 million? I mean, it doesn't.
I mean, it's not. I'm
not going to come on here and say he's a bad player because he's not. I think there's exaggerations that go either way. And the exaggerations of Lukaku. He was actually excellent from March onwards for Inter. There's no doubt about that. He was fantastic. Of course, he missed those huge chances in the final, which is unfortunate for Inter. But apart from that, he was fantastic. So if Juventus get the Lukaku from March until the end of the season,
which I think they will. I think they will, and I think that's what they're counting on. I don't think they're getting Pogba. Pogba was different. Pogba was a completely different situation. But there is a risk. There's always a risk involved. No doubt about that.
The other thing to worry. The other thing is, Lukaku has only done well in his career when he's felt loved. I think everybody will agree with that. And will there be that love with the Juventus fans? We've just,
no, there isn't. The love between the Juve fans. Look, he was racially abused by them less than 4 or 5 months ago.
We're recording this on Monday afternoon. Now, on Monday morning, there were chants outside when the Juventus players were arriving to training. There was mass chants from Juventus fans chanting, "We do not want Lukaku." And you only have to go onto social media and see what Juventus fans are saying, that they don't want Lukaku. Now, of course, that can change. If the players start playing well, that they will start chanting for it, and that's just football. But Lukaku has only really done well when he's felt loved, felt like the main man. So, is he going to get that at Juventus? Is he going to feel the connection with Juventus? He needs to feel it himself as well. Having been racially abused, by Juventus, by some, it's not all, but some, only a section of Juventus fans. Is that gonna stop him from, fulfilling his potential at Juventus? I don't know. It's going to be a difficult, win. He's not, but he's also the kind of guy. He has this, this whole thing that he has about him of turning his life into a movie, and they first winning people over and building these kind of things in his head where proving the doubters and haters wrong, dog. Like he is this kind of character that thinks he's a like a 1990s hip hop movie. It's like he's got this kind of vibe about him where he's like, I never do things easily. I always go against the grain. I always go against the wind in my face, bro. Like that's the kind of character he is, and he will go into Juve trying to win the fans over, and then when he wins them over, he'll continue to do that silencing thing, and then do you know what I mean? Like that's just who he is. So I don't think I think he sees that as a challenge. The most important thing at Juve for him is that Allegri wants him, that Allegri believes in him, that he's an Allegri player, that he's the number one at Juve up front for Allegri. The fans, he clearly doesn't give a crap about. Let me just throw one last, spanner in the works here. Is there a possibility with Giuntoli that he is thinking to the future of Lukaku, and that maybe Antonio Conte?
That's exactly what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking, because I think this will be the last season of Allegri. I don't think they're going to extend Allegri's contract past this season, and I don't think Allegri is going to go into his last contract either. So I actually think that if Conte is away this season, he could return next season. Yes, unless something crazy happens and somebody snaps Conte up. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Conte returns the following summer, and with Lukaku there, who he loves. What can you do?
That's. I think that's a possibility. I do. I wonder, because I just feel like Giuntoli being I mean, the job that he did at Napoli, it was all about building a project and sustainable projects. I just don't. It doesn't seem to marry with what he's done in the past. Of course, when you're a bigger club, you have to work slightly differently, and you have to win straight away, which isn't expected of you at Napoli. But yeah, I don't know. But let's before we talk more about Juventus, because there's lots to talk about in Juventus on today's show. Now that Lukaku has been dropped by Inter, they still need to sign a striker. Now, Sky Sport Italia say there's 4 strikers on the shortlist: Balogun, Unzola, Morata, and Taremi. Balogun and Taremi seem to be the 2 favourites. What is the situation, and who would you like, and who would Inter fans like most out of these?
I think, me personally, I look at well, if you were going to move heaven and earth to get Lukaku, that means that you want a certain type of striker. And Thuram and Lukaku were going to be 2 of those, which were kind of similar. And then you're going to have Lautaro and Correa, or whoever Correa replaces if Correa leaves, were going to be the ones that you choose from. Those are the 4. So those are the characters you're looking for, those style of players. And when you look at that style of player, Taremi and Enzola are more similar to Lukaku than Morata and Balogun is, for characteristics. Enzola is a player I think who we were impressed by at Spezia, but you can't sit and talk about winning the Scudetto and then not go after Enzola after Lukaku. That makes no sense. It's stupid. You make yourself look dumb again. So you need someone with some kind of an international pedigree, someone who has Champions League experience and has won trophies, even if it's in a different country. And there, for me, if you've watched, how Taremi has played and what kind of a player he's become under Conceição, since joining Conceição, he's a goal scorer and he's an assist man. Last season is 32 goals, I think it was, and 18 assists or 15 assists in all competitions. 31 goals and 14 assists. That the season he was the top goal scorer in Portugal, the second time he became that. The season before that, 26 goals and 17 assists. Season before that, 23 goals and 18 assists. So for me, that makes more sense to go after him. And also for the price range, and his wages won't be as expensive. Because again, if you're prepared to go after Lukaku for that kind of money, you wouldn't get paid for Lukaku. There's no resale value. So if you're going to do that, Taremi is like a year older, but he hasn't played as much football in his life. When he was younger, he did his military service for 2 years. So he didn't play as much. And also he's a late bloomer and he still hasn't peaked. While, Lukaku's played first team football since he was 15 years old. So, that's how I look at it. For Balogun, look, if Lukaku, Thuram, Lautaro, Correa was the original plan, that means you're going to rotate your 4 strikers. That means that they have to be ready when called upon. And Balogun is a big talent, huge talent. He scored lots of goals last season. But he's not the finished product. And if you're bringing in someone and he's a young player who needs to play, and to rotate him and expect him to be the finished product, it's a risk. And I think...
And it's a lot of money as well.
It's a lot of money as well. And also the deal isn't very sweet. I mean, Arsenal they're not going to do Inter any favours. They're not cash strapped. So Inter are going to have to break the bank for this guy, and they don't have a lot of money to do it. And they probably have to spend most of the Onana money on signing 2 goalkeepers in Trubin and Sommer in an ideal world. So... And then you still have a 6 midfielder and another striker to fill. So to me, it makes no sense to go after Balogun, because even if you get him for 30, 40 million, well, Arsenal will want to buy back at 45, 50. So you're not going to make that much money on him either. And it's like, it doesn't make much sense to me. Morata is insanity. I mean, the only way that I would accept Alvaro Morata is if he's replacing Joaquin Correa. Yes, Alvaro Morata would be a huge upgrade on Joaquin Correa. But other than that, Alvaro Morata, replacing Romelu Lukaku with Alvaro Morata is insanity. What possible tactical and characteristical traits do they have in common? other than that they're both human beings and that they play football for a living and that they play up front. But other than that, there's nothing, like there's no similarities between them whatsoever. So it makes no sense tactically for me at all, unless you're replacing Correa with Morata. I'd be all in favor of that. I think Alvaro Morata is 100 times the player Joaquin Correa is. But to replace Lukaku with Morata just makes no sense to me. And again, Inter need to have a reliable goal scorer. Lukaku is their penalty taker. Taremi is their is a penalty taker. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that kind of, I'm looking at characteristics and traits. But I think most Inter fans at this point would probably like Balogun because he's young and all that. But I just don't see Arsenal doing Inter any favors.
Yeah, I think it is a lot of money. But then, even Taremi, the Porto are asking for 30 million for a player that turns 31, I think, before the end of this month. So it's a lot of money, whichever way you look at it. But then it was also crazy amount of money for Lukaku as well. And then you've got the salary to take into account. Anyway, Juan Cuadrado, just to add to the whole Lukaku craziness, Juan Cuadrado is joining Inter. It's basically a done deal. 2 million salary for a 1-year contract. He rejected a move to Saudi Arabia and he rejected Fenerbahce in order to join Inter. So Juventus fans are obviously going to feel exactly the same towards Cuadrado as Inter fans are going to feel towards Lukaku. Me personally, I've been one of Cuadrado's few defenders. I don't understand. He's always been so very unpopular with a large portion of the Juventus fan base. I've never understood that. I've always thought he's fantastic. I thought he's, one of the few players that Juventus have had during this time that's had that ability to break the press, to beat their man, to create overloads. Very versatile player. Chips in with goals, chips in with assists. Plays a lot of games. I think he's been fantastic for Juventus over this period. I think he's obviously past his best now. He's 35. I can kind of understand Juventus not giving him a new 1-year contract, which he wanted. He wanted to stay at Juve for another year. But, I guess it is disappointing from the Juventus fans' perspective that he then joins your rivals. It does kind of, I guess, was it worth it just for a year? Could you have gone somewhere else? The only thing I would say on Cuadrado's side is he's been very open. He wants to play another World Cup. So he wants to obviously stay at a high level. He doesn't want to move to Saudi Arabia or even to Turkey yet. Question is, could he have found someone else other than Inter? Are you happy, though, Nima, as an Inter fan, for Cuadrado?
I have no problems with this deal other than, look, I think it's... I have no problems with it. I really, really don't. Because I look at it like this. I mean, on paper kind of thing. He will cost less than Bellanova did last year in between loan and wages. And I saw an article on this. They save actually money on him. He's going to make around 2.5 million euros plus add-ons. He is very experienced. Inter have lost so much leadership and experience this summer in D'Ambrosio, Handanovic, Dzeko, and of course now with Lukaku gone as well. I mean, that's a lot of experience. So you need to have someone who has experience in the dressing room, because the idea is that Lautaro, Barella, and Bastoni are now going to fund the fundamentals of this new Inter dressing room. Skriniar has left as well. So you have to have some experience. Inter don't have a lot of money. He understands the Serie A. In terms of different styles of the player he's a dribbler. He can beat his man. He can shoot. He's quite the goal scorer. So he's different to Denzel Dumfries.
Suits the formation as well.
Suits the formation in a 3-5-2. And he's supposed to rotate with Denzel Dumfries, which, I mean, to be honest, he is, even now at this point when he's pretty much way past his best, he's still better than Denzel Dumfries. So
I don't know about that. But I do think he can be. I do think he was still useful He actually had quite a strong end to the season for Juventus.
Yeah, he did.
Last season. He didn't start very well first half of the season.
No, he didn't.
He ended, but I think he can be useful in short bursts. Like I think Cuadrado is a player that even now, if you bring him on even for the last 20 minutes, half an hour in a game, including in Europe, I still think he can be useful. I do. He's still got that ability to beat his man. I mean, you know what he's going to do. You know he's going to drop his left shoulder and then go on the outside, but you can never stop him even now. So he's still able to break a line and create an overload, and I think that's very, very useful. But he's at a certain age now where age can catch up with you quickly. We've seen it before. I remember when Lucio went from Inter to Juve, and was still at a decent level, but then
he was finished when he joined Juve. He was absolutely finished. I never understood that move at all. I thought it was a weird one when he joined Juve. I remember Lucio. I think for Inter, it's like they know that they need to have different styles of players on the wings, and I think that's why Inter are open to getting rid of Gosens and bringing in Carlos Agosto as well from Monza, because compared to Di Marco on the other end, I mean, you want to have options on the wings. You want to have the Di Marco crosser, and his left foot is fantastic. He's never going to beat his man, so you need someone who can beat his man on the wings, on either wing, and Cuadrado can do that, and Agosto can do that. Di Marco and Dumfries can't. So you want to have options for different games. You want to have different weapons to attack, to resolve situations in games, and I think that's the way they look at it. And I know, for me, I'm not bothered about. I think 1 year, 2.5 million. He's less than Bellanova, just 1 year. That's a decent. I'm not upset about that at all. What I am critical of, though, is I do think that this summer, in certain positions, Marotta and Ausilio have shown that they lack in imagination. They lack. It just feels so
looking to the future.
Desperate. Yeah, desperate. Stopgap, yeah. And stopgap, desperate, and lack of imagination. And that's something that, look, that defense is going to need a massive overhaul next summer. Because if you bring in Cuadrado, you have Acerbi, you have Darmian. Okay, you brought in Bisek, but he's a youngster. You don't know how good he's going to be. He could be absolutely fantastic, but you don't know. So now's the time. Like this is next summer is all about the defense, and on top of that, you got 2 goalkeepers coming in. One is Sommer, the other one could be Trubin or could be Audero. So you lose. There's a big sense of insecurity and uncertainty about Inter defensively, which already was a problem last summer and last season. So they are risking it here, but they got no choice. I get that financially they got no choice, but this is a little bit Aspilicueta-ish. Okay, but I do get it. Get it.
You get it. Okay. Well, talking about uncertainty defensively, a defender that has looked very uncertain for the last year or so is Leonardo Bonucci, and he has been told by Juventus, by Giuntoli and Giovanni Manna, that they don't want him. He's been basically frozen out of the squad. He won't go on tour to America. The decision has been shared with Allegri. So that's Juventus telling Bonucci, well, that's it. That's your Juventus career over. Find a new club. That's basically what Juventus have done. Very ruthless. For me, I think it's a decision that had to be made. He's clearly...
I don't understand how it wasn't made 2 years ago, if I'm perfectly honest, after the Euros. I think he was finished already then. I think the Euros was his last... He creamed out the last level of quality he had.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to make the decision after he's been maybe the best player at the tournament. But this time last year, absolutely. These kind of the ruthless decisions needed to be made. Maybe they thought, well, we got rid of Chiellini. We don't want to get rid of Bonucci in the same summer. We need some experience. But there's just no point in keeping a player around just to be a cheerleader. If you're going to do that, just make him become a coach. Don't let him take up a spot on the team or in the squad, and then he puts out performances like we saw from Bonucci last season, where he cost Juventus, so many points because he just wasn't good enough. So this was a decision that had to be made. He's too old. He's 36 now. His legs have completely gone, and something had to be done. And I think this is a positive thing of Giuntoli coming in, that he's shown that, juxtaposed against what he's done with Lukaku, which you'd say is maybe something he shouldn't be doing. But they have to make these decisions. For Bonucci, it's not good, as he wanted another year so he could play at the Euros. From what we've seen, it seems like Bonucci is not ready to accept defeat, that he wants to try and win them over. But I think his decision had to be made, isn't it, Nima?
Yes, I think this is inevitable. I don't, I'm sorry if Juve fans are upset or if people feel... No, I mean, I would be cheering this, to be honest.
What does it mean for Bonucci? Like, where does he go from here? I mean, who does he go? Where does he go? Because, I mean, who could he do a job for now? Is there any teams that in Serie A that you think... I mean, I saw some ridiculous links, like, was it not PSG? I think it was PSG, or there were some teams in Newcastle I saw, which is just totally bizarre. I think the Premier League's the last place Bonucci was succeeding when his legs have gone like they have. But like, is there anywhere that you could see Bonucci still doing a job, or should he just retire? Do you think?
I think the best thing that can happen for him is if he left, like Chiellini did, and went to the United States, or went
Saudi Arabia,
or something like that. I think at this level he is finished.
On a European
at the European top level, yeah. I think he is, unless he decides to do one of these Buffon kind of things where, go to a smaller club and
Sampdoria with Pirlo,
something like that. To bring Sampdoria to help Pirlo, or, do you know what I mean? Like something like that. I just don't see him at the highest level. I'm thanking the Lord, even though I'm not religious, I'm an atheist. I am praying to I'm praying to God and everything, every deity ever conceived and that has existed in history of mankind, that Inter already have Acerbi and Stefan De Vrij there, because otherwise I think Bonucci would be turning up at Appiano Gentile for another return, and thank you that this is no longer an option, because he's a central in a back three. He's a central defender in like a mid like a central defender in a back three. He can't play to the right, so thank you for that. But I do think, for his sake, I think it's time to move on to either to the MLS or Saudi Arabia, or to a lower. I
think he's got a little bit of what Ronaldo had, sort of like towards the end of his time at Manchester United, where he's been, such a legend of the game, that sometimes these kind of players can't accept when their powers have waned. And I think that's with Bonucci. Same with Bonucci. Bonucci still wants to play at the highest level. He still wants to play for Juventus, but more importantly, he wants to play at the Euros. He wants to be the man, Italy's captain, and make that his final tournament. And that's a year away. And, Roberto Mancini has shown too much loyalty. I mean, we saw, didn't we, just last month with the Nations League in the semi-finals. He basically cost Italy that game in the semi-final against Spain with that error that he made for the first goal. And he was horrific in that match. Now, this could actually end up being a blessing for Italy, that Juventus doing this. You would think that that's it for Bonucci for Italy now, surely, unless somehow he manages to find himself, another club and he turns it around. You'd think Mancini surely can't keep picking Bonucci now. When he picks his squad for these crucial World Cup qualifiers in September, Bonucci surely can't be in that squad, can he?
No, he has no business in that squad. It doesn't matter if they play with a back three or a back four or whatever. Bonucci is not good enough. It's time to move on. He has to cut ties. I don't understand, when Mancini first came on, one of the reasons I wanted him as a coach, and one of the reasons that I think he did really well, was because he cut ties. He was ruthless. He came in with a new approach, new ideas. He integrated new players. He needs to cut the umbilical cord with this old guard that won him the Euros, especially the 30-plus players. You have to move on. Otherwise, you're just wasting Italy's time, and you're going to play with your job as well, because you will get sacked. You don't get to the Euros, you will be sacked, and your brand will be toxic. You're not going to get another job in Europe again. You're going to be sent to, to do what Lippi did after he won the World Cup, all over the world, and that's not what he wants. He wants to have another top job, and in order to have another top job, he has to deliver with Italy now, and he can't do that if he's going to continue with this Leonardo Bonucci stuff. The Toloi nonsense. Like, stop it, enough, move on.
Yeah, I think everybody agrees there. Just finishing on Juventus, so there is another deal that they are working on, and that is Frank Kessie. Now, those who listen to our Milan Mercato deep dive with Vito Angela last Thursday, and I would really recommend everybody listen to that. It's a fantastic pod. He gave us some really great insight in the transfer business that Milan are planning between now and the end of the summer, ins and outs. He mentioned that Kessie's agent is offering him around to clubs, and that he had been offered to Milan. It's something that Milan have thought about, although they haven't, nothing concrete has come of it. Now, since then, we've learnt that Juventus are actively in negotiations to sign Kessie. They're in a two-way battle at the moment in terms of concrete offers, and along with Al Hilal, another Saudi Arabian team. And the proposal is a loan with an option to buy. So again, this is the prince of Allegri. He wants ready-made physical players. I'm not, again, same as with Lukaku, I'm not sure whether this is good for Juventus in terms of, I look at Juventus' centre midfield, and I think it's the last place in the team that Juventus needs work. I mean, they've got Pogba, they've got Rabiot, who's obviously signed on for another year. They've got Locatelli, they've got Fagioli, they've got Rovella coming back, who I really like. They've got Miretti, and that's before you get to those who are officially to sell and will be moved on in one way or another, and that's Arthur Melo, Zakaria, McKennie. So Juventus are stacked in centre midfield, but they've got a lot of good young players there: Locatelli, Fagioli, Rovella, Miretti. Certainly, Locatelli, Fagioli, and Rovella. They're three players I believe in that can be developed. So Juventus, you're thinking they're going to have to sell or offload one of these younger Italian players to make way for Kessie, and I'm not sure whether I'm comfortable with that. And I'm not sure. I know Kessie's not old; he's 26, but I'm not sure whether this is, I don't think it's should be a priority for Juventus. I think it's, they should be looking at other areas.
What happened with those Paul Pogba talks with Saudi? Did they all, what was are those still ongoing? Is there still a decision to be made? What's happening there? Because I think that is intermediaries, as they do, have been, have been making proposals to Pogba. And we have to see how they play out. The Kessie signing could suggest that maybe Juventus want Pogba out. Maybe they see him as a replacement for Pogba. Someone's going to have to go. And if we're talking about Antonio Conte taking over in a year from now, he is a Conte
he's tried
player.
To sign him, hasn't he, before?
Yeah. So this makes sense to me, and he's a younger player. Than what so he's not old, and he's not really doing a good job. He's not he's not a Barcelona player. I never understood why they signed him in the first place. It's
a loan. If it is a loan with an option, the key being option and not an obligation, then financially it's not a big deal. And obviously we'll see what the salary is. But again, I don't want this signing of Kessie to be at the expense of one of these younger players who, I believe should be the future and give Juventus that part of the Juventus project. The issue with Juventus is like players that could have, been the cornerstone of a Juventus for the next 5 years. In recent years, Juventus have just been getting rid of too many of these players. We've just one in, one out, buy someone in, get rid of them. So bring in Kessie or bring in Pogba and get rid of a player in midfield that could be around for the next 5 years. They've got to stop that. At some point, they've got to sit down and think, right, this is going to be our core that we want to build the team around for the next 5 years. And I don't want Kessie to be at the expense of a Locatelli or Fagioli or Ravella or even a Miretti. I think Miretti should go out on loan this season, but I don't want him sold. So I think that's the key here with the Kessie signing. Plus, I just think that this is a low priority for Juventus. I think the priority is obviously the attack and the fullbacks or wing backs in particular, and also another central defender as well. I mean, these should be the priorities for Juventus before they start, working on the centre of the midfield. Talking of centre midfielders, Tijani Reijnders is to sign for Milan in the next day or two. Milan will pay AZ a fee of 20 million euros plus bonuses for him. 4-year contract, salary of around 1.7 million euros. Again, we spoke to Vito Angeli on our Milan deep dive last Thursday about this signing, so listen to that. But I spoke to a Dutch football journalist, Imre Himmelbauer, this morning about Reijnders and kind of what Milan fans can expect from him, because I haven't seen too much of him, I'll be honest with you. I've seen a little bit of AZ in Europe. So I asked Imre, what can Milan expect? And I'll quote him. He says, I would say he's a pretty good player, but I do think Milan are overpaying a bit, especially as he is going to be a replacement for Tonali. Reijnders had a good season last season. He was really productive, especially for someone that has a somewhat defensive role in the midfield. But there is a concern over whether he has the technique on the ball to succeed at Milan. His best role is as a number 8, so we could potentially see, when Benacer returns from injury, a midfield 3 of Benacer, Reijnders as the kind of centre midfielder, and then Ruben Loftus-Cheek on the right of the midfield 3. He again says that Milan overpaid. He thinks they should have gone for his teammate, Orkun Kokcu, who he thinks is a superior player. As for strengths and weaknesses, he would say physicality. Again, that ties into kind of this new Milan, isn't it, that we've been talking about. They want to be more physical, have more intensity. He has the stamina to play a whole game. He's very hardworking. He's a team player. He's not somebody that will stand out individually, but he'll make those around him play better. He's a box-to-box player. His weaknesses, again, he underlines his technique as something that maybe he has an issue, and he needs to speed up because he's going to be playing at a higher level and a higher intensity than the Eredivisie. So that is something that he will also have to work on. But he is successful. He is optimistic. Imre says that he can be a success, and that Dutch central midfielders have been quite successful in Italy in recent seasons, the likes of De Roon and Koopmeiners. So that's what the Dutch expert says. If again, just going back to what Vito Angeli said on Thursday, Milan have now, or will have now, signed 2 central midfielders, Loftus-Cheek and Reijnders, but they do still plan to sign another central midfielder if possible, if the market opportunity arises. They're changing formation from a 4-2-3-1 to a 4-3-3 this season, so there'll be no attacking central midfielder, no Brahim Diaz, he's gone back to Madrid. De Ketelaere, we know, is for sale. So Milan could still bring in another central midfielder, but Milan are going to sign him. So I'm assuming, Nima, you probably haven't seen too much of him either.
From what I've seen from him, I actually think he will do well at Milan. I mean, he fits into the mold that they want to bring in. I mean, he's a number 8, isn't he? I mean, they want to play a 4-3. It's quite clear. Pioli's, both of these clubs, Inter and Milan, are changing how they play. They are, I never expected Milan to make as many changes as they are, but they are completely changing how they're playing. And it's going to be really interesting to see how that goes, to be honest. But I think he's an interesting player for sure. Overpaying or not, look, with all due respect, I think that depends. What you get out of him. If he turns out to be fantastic, 24 million is not that bad, is he? Is it?
It's one season. You're paying for one season as a regular for AZ. I guess there is the concern with that. But then we see that a lot. Players off the back of one season, and they go for big money. So I guess that's to be expected now in modern football. AZ did impress me as a team when I watched them in Europe last season. And they knocked out Lazio. They knocked out, wasn't it, in Europe, in the Europa League, or the Conference League. So I think I mean Milan have a clear plan of where they're going. We'll have to see whether the decision to sell Tonali and replace them with these guys was the correct one.
Now I'm reading that Musa as well, who I think is going to be very, very important for them as well. Is that that's something I've been waiting for them to complete for a long time. I think that's a good play. I'm starting to see what Yunus Musa, the American. I'm starting to see what Milan want to do, and it's a completely different Milan. It's a much more dynamic Milan, and it's a Milan where it's no longer just Theo, Leao, and Inshallah. It is absolutely not that at all. He's building a team to impose themselves on their opposition in a system, and I think Milan are going to be a much more attacking side. How it goes, who knows? They need to have, is Leao going to be the main finisher, or are they bringing someone else in to kind of help him with that goal scoring? Because I think the Taremi links make sense in that aspect. So no, it's going to be a very interesting.
My concern with these signings, the central midfield signings, is like, where are the goals going to come from? There's going to be no goals in midfield with these signings.
I think Pulisic. I think they're counting on Pulisic.
But he's an attacker. He'll be playing attack. But the midfield, Reijnders, you're not going to get goals from. Musa doesn't score any goals. Benacer, when he's back from injury, he doesn't score any goals. Krunic, he doesn't score many goals. Loftus-Cheek, I mean, he's hardly prolific. There is a goal threat there. There can be a goal threat if he's given the right role.
I think it depends. I think they're going to share it amongst the top three. Like, I think the main, it's going to be Theo, Leao, whoever's the number 9, Giroud, Taremi, whoever, and then Pulisic as well. I think that's what they're looking at.
The best teams, you need goals from your midfield. You can't rely just on your attack from your midfield. So that is already, for me, that looks like a glaring weakness for me in this Milan team, that the lack of goals that are going to come from the midfield. But, Musa hasn't signed yet. They could sign someone else. I'm just saying, the way that it's mapping out, I see that as a possible glaring weakness for Milan next season. Talking about goals or lack of goals, Alvaro Morata or Gianluca Scamacca, they didn't score many goals, either of them last season. So it looks like it's going to be one of these for the striker position at Roma. Roma's transfer chief, Tiago Pinto, is going to meet with Morata's agent today, Monday. Now, the situation is as I
just
understand
to plug,
it,
just before we go, we talk about Roma. I just want to say that this week we're doing a transfer deep dive on Roma, which will come out on Wednesday or Thursday. I just wanted to give a shout out on that. That we're going to.
Well, and who's that with? Nima?
It's Andrea Di Carlo.
Right.
Andrea Di Carlo, who I think he used to, I don't know if he's still on Sport Mediaset or not. But I think I know that he's part of one of he works for Radio Romanista and Il Romanista Web, and they're one of the bigger Rome radio stations and Roma sites. Andrea Di Carlo.
Well, he can tell us all about that. So we won't go into too much detail on this. But all I would say, what my understanding is that Mourinho's preferred target is Morata, Jose Mourinho, but Tiago Pinto and Roma club as a whole, understandably, because they want to build with younger, some more sustainable players, their preferred target is Scamacca. But Roma only want to sign Scamacca on loan with an option to buy. That's something that West Ham are not happy with. And as for Morata, well, there's the issue with his cost. There's talk that he might be signing a new contract with Atletico Madrid, which will insert a lower release clause of around about 12 million euros. If that's not the case, because there's no guarantee that is actually the case, then Atletico Madrid, if they're going to be asking for too much more money than that, like 20 million or something, then, for someone that's going to be 31 this year, for a team like Roma, they're only, with the financial fair play that we've just seen, that they didn't meet the demands at the end of last month. There's a financial angle to this as well. So, but just talking in terms of who do you think Roma should go for? Who do you think should go for out these two?
Scamacca, without a doubt, because of the longevity of it as well. I mean, there's going to be a point when Mourinho leaves. And 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 I think he would be a beautifully romantic signing as well, wouldn't he? I mean, he's a Roma kid. He supports Roma. He's been very clear about that. And I think that for him to come home, I think that would be...
Just don't let his dad near the...
Yeah, but he doesn't have any relationship with his dad or his nonno, who did what they did. But look, if you're looking for now, if Mourinho wants Morata and he's got Dybala and Pellegrini there, then you give Mourinho what he wants. But no.
Technically, I think that would be a lot of fun, wouldn't it? Those if they can get it working. We know Dybala and Pellegrini hasn't worked, but if they can somehow find the formula.
Maybe Morata could be the key that unlocks.
Well, that is one thing about Morata. He does make players around him play better.
He does.
Yeah.
But the problem that Roma had, and I'm going to ask on Wednesday about this, is Andrea about this, is I don't quite understand who's going to score the goals, because Dybala's not a prolific goal scorer. Roma had a problem with someone putting the ball into the back of the net. Morata isn't, Pellegrini isn't, Dybala isn't. So who's going to be that 25, 30 goal season guy? Because Roma creates so many chances. The stats show that.
Dybala, for me, there's no doubt Dybala will definitely score more than 20 plus goals a season if he's fit. That's the problem. There's no doubt about that for me. But yeah, I agree. I think the only thing about Roma is that at least they do have goals throughout the team. But we saw last season that scoring goals was a big problem for them. And stopped them from winning a trophy, didn't it? They didn't put their chances away in the final. Okay, right.
Yeah, so we will have just all Roma fans, just so you know, we will be having a full-on Roma deep dive this week. Either it's Wednesday or Thursday that'll come out. And then the following week, I'm looking to do a Lazio deep dive as well.
Yeah.
And the week after that, Fiorentina, who we're moving on to now, because they have signed one of the signings of the summer, if you ask me.
Well, this is insane. 10 million plus 1 million in add-ons for Fabiano Parisi from Empoli.
It's a fantastic deal.
I mean, it's just insane.
Absolutely fantastic.
It just goes into what I was saying last week about how Serie A teams undersell. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm happy this transfer has happened, because I think this is a good step up for Parisi. I'm a big fan of the player. I really think he can go very far in the game. I think he's got everything to potentially be an Italy. Well, there's so many good left backs for Italy, but good enough to be Italy's left back, if not necessarily Italy's left back. And to only go for 11 million euros. I mean, we were just criticising. We had a question on our Q&A last week.
Yeah, on our Q&A pod, yeah.
Who's the worst sporting director? Is it Daniele Prade? And we were kind of like, maybe it is, based on what he's done. And then he pulls out a deal like this.
Yeah, he does. And it's a fantastic... It's an absolutely brilliant signing. It's cheap. The player has incredible potential. He'll suit Vincenzo Italiano's style of play. It just ticks every box. I think it's such a smart signing in every sense of the word. I'm so impressed.
Why were more teams not in for this guy? I mean, we know Juventus, we had Romeo Agresti on, we know Juventus were in talks with Empoli, but the problem Juventus have is they have too many players at left wing back. They needed to shift some. They had 4 players that could play left wing back. They had to get rid of someone, and obviously they haven't been able to do that in time. And Fiorentina have come in and they've closed the deal. But Juventus aside, I mean, for me, this is someone that if you're thinking, right, we want a left back for the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, Parisi, for me, I mean,
I don't understand why you...
Not just in Italy, I'm looking Premier League. I think he fits the Premier League perfectly. He's lightning quick. He's got stamina. He goes up and down. He can defend. He's got everything. For me, he's complete. For me, I mean, he's got everything.
The only thing is maybe aerially a little bit.
Aerially is something, yeah. But apart from that, I mean, I think he's absolutely fantastic.
No, it's a smart signing for sure. It's a very intelligent signing. It's a player who suits the coach perfectly. I'm very, very impressed with what they've done here. And if they get Artur Melo as well on the lead deal where Juventus will pay half his wages, I don't know what to tell you, brother. Like that is
that would be an interesting one. He's definitely an Italiano player. The problem is with Artur Melo is he's barely played any football for 2 years, so it's not going to be easy to turn that around. But if there is somebody that can, I think it's Italiano. I think he definitely has got the attributes to be an Italiano player, the way that he likes to break the press. But it's been a good start to the summer for for Fiorentina.
No, it's been a fantastic start to the summer, and we're going to do a proper deep dive on them as well and what they do.
Yeah, and we'll do a proper deep dive on Lazio hopefully next week. So all I will say on this is that Lazio are set to sign Valentin Castellanos from New York City FC. Quite a lot of money, actually. They're going to pay 15 plus 5, 20 million euros in total for Castellanos. He scored 13 goals in La Liga last season for Girona on loan from New York. He could potentially replace Immobile, who has received a huge bid from Saudi Arabia, from Saudi Arabia, 3-year contract, 20 million a year, 60 million in total. Lotito has denied this and said that he wouldn't sell Immobile even for 50 million, or they would need at least 50 million to tempt. But I guess that's one to watch this space. There's going to be a lot of crazy Saudi offers. Right, just before we get on to Badger and Prem Face of the Week, just have to congratulate and celebrate Italy under-19s winning Euro 2023. They beat Portugal 1-0 in the final after beating Spain 3-2 in a fantastic semi-final. I watched these games and it was fully deserved from Italy. Italy fully deserved champions, European champions. They were absolutely fantastic. Dominated Portugal in the first half. Portugal put them under a bit more pressure in the second half, but Italy defended really well. They should have scored more. They created lots of chances. The winner was scored by Michael Kayode, who's another Fiorentina player, who's a right back but played on the right wing in the knockouts, and he was a force of nature down the right, and he scored with a header. Very, very impressive. But the two really small little players who really impressed me in the semis and the final were Samuele Vignato, who plays for Monza, and he's been somebody that's been spoken quite highly.
Like him. I really like him.
He's a really short, kind of Papu Gomez kind of player. I think it's the way to describe him. Really short, but fantastic, like little turn of speed. Great little dribbler, can go right and left. Very inventive dribbler, creative. But also a Juventus youth player, Luis Hassa, who's of Albanian heritage, and he got the assist in the final. And he struggled a bit in the group stage playing up front, and then was moved into central midfield, and he was really, really good. And these two, they were running the show. They're link up. They're really short, kind of Spanish style kind of players. Fantastic. And Mastrantonio, the goalkeeper from Roma, he was very, very commanding. There was the Della Valles, the one plays for Juventus, one plays for Torino, born a few weeks apart from each other. They're not brothers. I believe they're cousins, but somebody correct me if I'm wrong there. They were very, very good. And Esposito, the centre forward from Inter, tall centre forward, holds the ball up really well. He's a year younger than everyone. He holds the ball up really well. He looks like somebody to watch out for in the future. And that's before we even talk about the so-called star of the team, the big name of the team, Cher Undur, who's just signed for PSG, who's been likened to. We have to
be honest. In Italy, you've been very critical of how Italians handle young players, and I think quite rightly so to some extent. But look at this summer, final of the Under-23 World Cup.
Under-20s.
Under-20, sorry. Yeah. Under-21 Euros, we know the quality of the players there. We know why they failed. It's because the coach isn't good enough and hasn't been for 20 years. But the quality is there if you look at the players. You look at the Under-19s. There is, at youth level, Italy is doing really well.
No, we've had a good summer. We've had a great summer in terms of the Under-19s and Under-20s. And the Under-21s, it shows that we can produce. Yeah, it shows that we can produce players. But we know what the issue is, Nima, don't we? It's the pathway from here into senior football. We know that is the problem with Italian football. But that's always
the problem everywhere.
It's a problem in Italy more than anywhere else. You just look at the stats, and the number of youth players that play in Italy is at the bottom of the league, is bottom of Europe. This is the problem. There needs to be a pathway for these guys to be playing Serie A, to be playing, at the top level. And that is what we cannot throw away this, because they've shown there's players here that have got potential. I mean, I look at this under-19 team and I look at players like Vignato and Hassa, who technically they've got it. They've got the technique. They've got the technical qualities to make it, but they need to be integrated into. I mean, Hassa's not going to make it with Allegri, and there's no doubt about that. They've got to be playing in the right teams with the right coaches, the right setup. The pathway needs to be there. So I just want these guys to start playing, and I hope they do.
Absolutely. But yeah, no, it's really looking good. I mean, the youth growth in terms of in international competition, whether it be global or just in Europe, under 19, under 21s, under 20, under 23, 20s, it's looking good. It's looking really good, and it's looking good for the first time in a very long time. And I'm actually pretty uplifted. I'm positive about it. We just need to see how, like you said, to get these guys into the Serie A.
Yeah, exactly. That's the key. Okay, right. Let's go on to Baggio and Prem Face of the week. Right, Baggio we've already done. It's the Italy under-19s,
and it's also Dele Alli. I cannot you have to watch that interview. What he's gone through, and you could tell when he was speaking about it so openly. He's still dealing with these issues, and I think it's so important that because the people are, when they don't know, people love to judge a lot, and him speaking so frankly about the incredibly traumatic childhood that he had up until the age of 12, and it doesn't just magically disappear then either, and then trying to find who you are and to deal with that trauma that you suffered as a child, and to try to at the same time go through puberty, and at the same time, you're a footballer with the eyes of the media always on you. I think, wow. What he did was fantastic.
Yeah, very brave.
Very brave and important. Very
important, yeah, because unfortunately this is what happens with victims of child abuse. This is something that unfortunately, with a vast majority of children who are abused into adulthood, it never goes away. It's with them for the rest of their lives. And that's why I personally think it's the most evil thing that you can do on this planet, is to abuse a child. Because when you abuse a child, it's I've seen it to people that I know. It stays with you forever, and you're damaged. And that's for use of a better word. And unfortunately, that's what's happened with Dele Alli, and it's very, very sad. And you can see watching that interview how much he suffered and how much he's still suffering. And this is what happens, and it's pure evil.
But there's more to it as well.
And it's a worldwide problem. If you look at the numbers of children who are abused or go missing, be it from the care system or just in general, it's absolutely off the scales, and not enough is done about it. You never see it talked about in the news at all. It's something that just isn't dealt with, and. Yeah, I mean, it's all the love in the world to Dele.
No, it's just not just that. I mean, look, this is someone who grew up in a very broken home, a father who he absolutely has no relationship with, who when he was sent to live with, the relationship was obviously not working. He wasn't the present father that he needed. His mother was an alcoholic, and he's very keen to talk about how he doesn't blame her because she has an illness. Alcoholism is an illness. Substance abuse is a health issue. And growing up the way he didn't have any lines, anyone to raise him. He was raised on his own. He talked about having a key and coming and going as he wanted. No one telling him when he needed to go to bed, when he had no structure in his life up until the age of 12, selling drugs as a result of that at the age of 8, have almost been killed by someone, an adult, at the estate next to him, holding him off a bridge when he was. I mean, we're talking. That's just some of the things that he decided to share. His life story is, it's not just the sexual abuse, although that is part of it, but it's all of it together. He is incredibly traumatized. A lot of people have grown up like that, and I think it's so important that he talks about this. If he can, like he said himself, I want to help someone, if I can, to seek help, to deal with the trauma and heal, because this is a lot of trauma, and like he so correctly said, trauma, psychological trauma, it leaves a mark on your body as well, and it's not just it's not just mental, and you have to heal. And I really want to commend him for the honest way, the vulnerable way that he spoke about it. And I think I just wish nothing but love, respect, and solidarity with people with all victims of all sorts of childhood abuse, be it sexual or otherwise. And I think he's such a brave person.
And more needs to be done to help these people, but also to stop it from happening. And that is the big thing, because nothing is done. Nothing is done. In fact, it's just without going off on too much of a tangent, you just look at the Epstein case, for example, what was done on that Epstein Island, and not a single person that was, and these are all high society, elite people. Not a single person, client of Epstein, has been arrested since that happened, and that tells you everything about how it's not only is nothing done about it, it's covered up. So this is unfortunately, and that's just one strand of it. Unfortunately, it's not dealt with, and you never see this stuff on the news, which is why you don't. It's never on the news.
I mean, no. But it's like this is really something that is a problem everywhere, and on this kind of these socioeconomic, a lot of this stuff.
Well, the vulnerable people, the vulnerable kids are like Dele Alli, because he grew up in an environment like that. They are the ones that are the ones that are the victims of this kind of abuse and this kind of upbringing, because they are vulnerable. They don't have, and then the people those that grew up in the care system, and he ended up going into the care system. Didn't he have a foster?
He did, and he said he was lucky. Yeah,
he was fortunate. So he got a good foster parent. Some don't. Some get bad foster parents. Some grew up in care homes. So many kids go missing from care homes. They get taken out of care homes. They disappear. They never hear from them again, and they get used for all this kind of abuse and trafficking, and because they're easily taken. So it's a real messed up. It's a horrible messed up system. It just goes to show that growing up in a family, a loving family, is something that you just you can't take for granted. If you're lucky enough,
really can't.
If you're lucky enough to have a family that loves you and parents that look after you, or guardians that look after you, whoever you grow up with.
In this day and age,
that's the only thing. It's a gift. It really is, because there's so many like Dele Alli that grew up in and
in horrific conditions, and
the triggers as well, because he's going to have lots of triggers, isn't he, that will set him off. And I think he said, didn't he, about when Mourinho left, he felt like Pochettino left. He felt like
he was abandoned again.
And that was a trigger for him. And this happens a lot with abuse victims.
Because it's not been because he's not dealt with it, but now he's starting to deal with it. And I think. And I just want to.
It's an ongoing struggle. It's something that he will be fighting for the rest of his life, and it's just going to be how he can try and deal with it.
As much as he can.
It's always going to be there, unfortunately. Which is why it's so evil, because this kind of stuff, it's like a life. It's like a life sentence for the victims.
Absolutely.
Anyway, Prem face of the week. Now I'm going to combine this. So just to end on a lighter note. So I've gone for the official MLS Twitter account.
How is that real?
We thought the Serie A Twitter account was bad.
How is this real? How did this happen?
I don't know. So Sergio Busquets signed for Inter Miami on Sunday evening, but they put a picture of Alvaro Arbeloa as the welcome to MLS. Brilliant, absolutely love it. Yeah, so that's my Prem face of the week.
That is without a doubt the Prem face of the week.
Yeah, but that fits in nicely because I put out. We discussed this on the show last week, didn't we? Saying that we want a name. we want to come up with a name, like coin a term for the American version of a Prem face. So it has to be someone who is a Prem face, but a kind of an Americanized version. So we asked our listeners to send in some suggestions, and I put out a tweet over the weekend asking for some suggestions. I've had so many hilarious suggestions, so I'm just getting my my post up now. Now, my two favourite ones. Let me put it in here for you, Nima, so you can have a little look while we're talking. So my two favourite ones are Yanka of the
Yeah,
week.
I like that one too. That one was my favourite too.
Was that your favourite one? So that was sent in by. Let me find it just so that I can give credit where it's due. So Rajat, who I believe is a patron.
Yeah.
Rajat at Rajat15 is his Twitter handle. So,
Yanka is really funny.
Yeah, Yanka is really good. My only issue with Yanka is that what is the beauty of Prem face is that it's got the Prem in the actual name as well, and then the face just makes it look like just a stupid face, kind of like. So you're a Prem face, whereas Yanka is kind of, there's no Premier League reference to it. It's just kind of like a play on words. So that's my only issue with that, but otherwise it's fantastic. And then Daniel Edwards is an Argentine football journalist. We had him on the show a few weeks back. He did a profile on Matteo Retegui. I really like this. He come up with Prem LS face, which I really, really liked as well. So those are my two favourites. I don't know if there's anything else. I mean, I'll read out.
We had the Lalas Awards. Someone should say we should call that.
Yeah.
Eduardo Beto, who's a patron, said that. Someone called Dan also said Yanker on Patreon. Shout out to him.
Andre says Uncle Sam stupid. Yank baller. Arash said crackpot of the week. Dunderhead. Max Lombardi says American jock face. Kunal Soni said sock face. I quite like that one. This one I like, the LeBron of soccer, which is quite a good one.
Yeah,
I'm just scrolling down.
Yeah, I think a Yanker was I think that is the winner right there. Like, I think that is so good. Yanker is so good.
Yankee Doodle Dummy.
People have gone crazy on
Yankass. Shit face. Yeah. I think my two favourites are Yanker and Prem LS face.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We will be using those going forward whenever any Americans or whenever anybody on ESPN FC says something stupid. We'll call them a Yanker or a Prem LS face. Okay, right, brilliant. Right, let's leave it at that. We went through a lot today. It was quite a lot to talk about.
It really is.
Yeah, we'll be back on Tuesday for the Q&A, and then Wednesday or Thursday for our latest transfer mercato deep dive on Roma.
Yeah, with Andrea Di Carlo from Il Romanista and Radio Romanista web.
Yeah, there we go.
So make sure to check that out. It's all out on patreon.com/TIFB.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, okay. Right, have a good week, everyone. We'll see you on Tuesday. Until then, ciao, ciao.